Hey, 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 everybody. Let's make sure we're all good. Look at that sharp sound, picture clarity, audio perfection that we have attained today. Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's starting to cool off a little bit here in Denver. So I went t-shirt today with my Google review of people. Not super impressed. So welcome to the show. Oh, it's over here. I should bring it over on screen. There's the little published work here. I have it when I put it up on the thing here. It's kind of a little bit in my way, a little bit. I should probably get it situated somewhere where y'all can see it. I'll see if I can reconfigure here. Okay, now welcome to the show. Hey everybody. So critical Q&A number 510 in this year of our Lord 2025. August 24th, to be specific. And let's get the Q&A box set up here. Please put your questions here. Usually works out if I put that in there of some fashion and throw that up on the screen here so that I can see your questions as they come in on the line. And let's flip over to the host and chat so I can also see some of your comments as they are coming in as well. Very happy to be with you here today. Very happy to be doing yet another live. Always good times. I do not have some long-winded monologue prepared for you today, but we do have a couple things to go over as folks come on board and we carry on with our podcasting, video, live streaming greatness here. I'm glad that you liked the podcast with Jane Borden. I did too. She's a kind of dare I say, a little bit of a higher brow guest than I usually have on my shows, which is not at all to put down any of my guests. But most of my guests don't write for, GQ and Vanity Fair, right? and don't have titles like culture editor. Jane was awesome. She is a really, really smart person, and she was really fun to talk to about her book, Cults Like Us, and that's us with a capital U, capital S for United States. Very, very interesting material. She published this book in March of this year, and I hope that y'all get a chance to check out her book as well as our talk about it, because I think she gave voice to thoughts that I've been having for years about some of the sort of, I love this word, I keep throwing it around, but kind of the cultic, framework on which this country is built. And it's no joke. It's no joke at all. If you really go, there's like literature analysis, there is cinematic analysis, and then there's sort of cultural analysis, like digging into what is the puzzle pieces that put this thing together that we think of as culture or values. Because what is culture? Culture is values. Culture is habits and routines and etiquette and manners and how people get along and the language they use and the social grease, right? That sort of helps those cog wheels that I'm always talking about of our society. It helps them turn. Is how do we get along? And how we get along in America has a lot of culty, fundamental kind of ideas built into it. And there's a lot of people in this country who are completely unwilling to even consider that could be true. But it's absolutely true. And it is really interesting to sort of open up the hood sometimes and take a look at the engine that's driving us. So Jane did a really, really good job with her book on that, and I'd really recommend you all check it out. Okay, now make sure, also, if you're new here or recently arrived, to put your questions under the please put your question here box, or however that's appearing to you in the chat there, because that way I can throw the questions up on the screen and we can go over them as we do with the Q&A. If you put them in the regular comment section, then I won't be able to throw them up and answer them during the show. You can also email me anytime during the week with questions you want to have up on the show, and we have 2 today from the email line. You can email me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. That's the address, askchrisshelton@gmail.com. And send me as many questions as you would like. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, of course, those questions go right to the top. Supporter, right? Because I want to give some degree of perk to that. I had a little delay in getting those out last week. I had some questions come in, and so we're going to start picking those up this week. Okay. Yes, thank you, TM, for following my instructions there. So yeah, keep the questions coming in. I'm going to first pop over and let's check out some Benson cam. This was just minutes ago, our little bundle of furry joy in the living room there. This is him atop his perch on the couch, and he saw I was filming, and I don't know, what his deal is when he's got a camera pointed at him, but he seems to be aware of it somehow. He's like, nope. And I'm like, no, get over here, you. Come here. And I kind of kept him over so he could be on the camera here. But this is him right now. Oh, my little furry beast. He has been so chill and cool lately. He just loves to play. He's really, really into playing lately. He bugs me. He whines. He moans. He's into it. So we've been having a lot of fun lately. All right, let's pop back over here, back to our regular screen. And as I put in last week, again, as folks are coming in and showing up, I'm going to share with you some critical thinking ideas. Remember, these are our critical thinking cards, and nobody's paying me to promote these. I'm just a critical thinking advocate. And I happen to think that practicing the mental muscles is just as important as exercising, the physical, regular muscles, right? So let's take a look at the logical fallacy of the week. Special pleading. Okay. Moving the goalposts to create exceptions when a claim is shown to be false. This is special pleading. And this is the first thing that comes to mind for me is not a fallacy, but a phenomenon of multi-level marketing, and how every law that gets passed or every regulation that gets put in place by the Federal Trade Commission or other government bodies always has exceptions carved out for it for multi-level marketing schemes. So it's not that that's that there aren't laws against doing shady things, but somehow MLMs always get special pleading. Edward Johns claimed to be psychic, it says here as an example, but when his abilities were tested under proper scientific conditions, they magically disappeared. Edward explained this, saying that one had to have faith in his abilities for them to work, right? Moving that goalpost. Always, nope. There's always some reason, right? Yes, School of Thought should reward me for the amount of promotion I've given them over the years on their products here. All right. So good times with that. I wanted to let you guys know a couple things. This has been an exciting week. I had interviews back to back most of the week. Every day we had stuff being recorded for the podcast. I have a new show in the can right now with Bryce and Shannon on the Mormon stuff. We got into secret history of the Mormon church, right? Cover-ups and things that have happened in history that are not so wonderful. And boy, did they enlighten me on a few things I knew nothing about. Bryce and Shannon really bring the details and the receipts, so to speak, right, of the Mormon church. And man, it's just always an education, uncovering more and more of the deceptive nonsense that group has been up to for centuries now, 2 centuries. The Mormon Church has been kicking around, taking over a state. I just have to say these things because it's just so funny that nobody else will. We have a. I mean, not nobody. I'm sure there are other people, on YouTube in the ex-Mormon world who may say stuff like this, but you never, ever, ever hear real mainstream criticism of the Mormon church the degree you should. Oh, not even remotely. This sort of international business conglomerate that does cult on the side, is kind of the Mormon church. They are steeped in so much money. And the number of lies that group has gotten away with telling and foisting off on thousands and millions of people, the fact that they basically run a theocracy. One of the states of the United States is a theocratic state. I mean, and it just gets brushed aside. People just ignore it like it's not the big deal that it is. The separation of church and state is a joke in Utah. It's not even a funny joke. It really gets my blood going. So anyway, you'll be getting a new show with them very, very soon on the podcast. And I am also, I wanted to let you all know, somebody sent me a question that I'm actually going to do a whole video on. I hope to be able to do that this next week. I'm doing some research right now to put some things together because there's this guy who is running around on the internet, and let me see if I've got his name right. This behavior expert, this CIA guy, Chase Hughes, has been running around for quite some time talking about the CIA interrogation techniques and the Alice in Wonderland drill in Scientology, which is one of the TRs to teach you how to communicate. There's a drill called Dear Alice, right, which uses the book Alice in Wonderland. And this guy, Chase Hughes, has been running around talking about how the CIA has this indoctrination manual from 1963, the KUBARK manual. And I've been asked various questions about this over the years. And I've always sort of poo-pooed it on general principles, just because the CIA has not been, employing L. Ron Hubbard or using his technology to, use it wickedly on people and this kind of thing. But people want to connect these dots desperately. And this Chase Hughes guy, who brings some degree of credibility to this point, completely, screws the pooch on talking to people about how the CIA was inspired by, and in fact, word for word, he says, that the Scientology material is in this indoctrination manual that the CIA did publish in 1963, and which was just released fairly recently through Freedom of Information, I think. And anyway, I'm going to do a whole video breaking down why that's nonsense, and Chase Hughes' claims are really just not true. So somebody sent me a question about that, and rather than bring it up here, which I just did, I thought I'd actually dedicate a whole video to that. And then, anyway, I've got that, and I got another video that I'm looking at putting together. Something about cognitive dissonance over there. So anyway, putting some new live streams together maybe for this next week, in addition to getting these interviews and stuff done for the podcast. So just trying to give you a little preview of some stuff coming up. that I hope you guys are going to get into. Maru, make sure you get your question in the question box, not in the comment section. There is as I mentioned earlier, there is a thing that says, please put your questions here. Go up there. That's where you put your question in so that I can answer it. All right, enough fooling around here. Let's go ahead and get to, there we go. Let's go ahead and get to your questions, starting from the top. Hey, hun. Hey, hun. Any plans on doing a deeper dive into the Science of Identity Foundation, considering it's the group Tulsi Gabbard is in? Ah, right. A deeper look could help understand what she intends to do in the Trump regime. Yeah, I have not had any plans in that regard at all. Tulsi Gabbard is chaos personified. I mean, she's such a ditz. And she did grow up in a cult in Hawaii, I guess the Science of Identity Foundation, which I looked into a little tiny bit and saw apparently she has still familial connections and probably some degree of belief. But it's not something I've dived into. Understand what she intends to do in the Trump regime. Yeah, don't know what her motivations are, and perhaps you're right. I shouldn't blow that off. I think you're right. She's got some. She's loony, man. Tulsi Gabbard is just one of those people who should just never have been anywhere near the levers of power that she has access to. I think she's our national security advisor now, or something like that, and it's just bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Yeah, let's go ahead and note that down. Science of Identity Foundation, Tulsi Gabbard. All right, noted. If not a video, maybe I can look that up and readdress that here. Maybe I'll do it that way. Let's see what I find. Okay, good question. All right, X-Cyan, I enjoyed your interview with Jane Borden you posted yesterday. What did you learn from her that you hadn't known before? The monomyth point that she brought up, I didn't know that word in connection with that idea of the book of Revelation being a monomyth, and that sort of story anatomy, or again framework, being so utilized in Hollywood and in the way that our stories are told. The lone hero who comes in to save the day and help all the poor, pacifistic people who, can't seem to get it together. And so here comes the stranger and, the Pale Rider, the outlaw Josie Wales. I mean, Clint Eastwood built his career on the monomyth. So did Ronald Reagan, all the Western stuff, John Wayne. But, so too did so much science fiction and fantasy and all of that. It's not the only storytelling device or framework at all, but it's a popular one, and it's super, super culturally dug in here in America, that stories be told that with that theme and that sort of telling. And of course, all the 1980s action movies were built on that concept, every one of them. The tough guy coming in to save the day and save all the people and move on, and never held down, never tied down. Who's that guy that they've done a couple? Tom Cruise did that thing. Anyway, there's so many versions of Jack Reacher. That's it. The Jack Reacher thing is the epitome of this. I mean, totally this, right? I think Louis L'Amour books certainly were the monomyth, right? And it was interesting. Anyway, that was a very interesting point, because that's what I mean about kind of opening looking under the hood, right? Look at the engine that's driving our culture. And that whole storyline is a myth that is central to how we think about how the world should be. And this is actually what I mean when I talk about that moral layer of my REM model, is you have morals at the bottom that connect to your identity, like it's butted right up against it. And your moral foundations can change. You can readjust and recalibrate during your life, but there are certain deep-seated values and ideas that get put into us when we're kids, right? These myths and cartoons and legends and stories that we're fed that give us an idea of how things are supposed to be. And that's very, very crucial to understand that moral layer. It's not just about what rules you're following, but why are those rules rules? Why is it important to you to comply with them? Because we all have them. Every one of us has ideas of right and wrong and what should and shouldn't be. And this is how we think about our world and whether it's ordered properly or not. And we get really uncomfortable and bent out of shape when the world is not complying with or doesn't seem to be ordered the way we think it's supposed to be. And I bring all this up only because this monomyth thing is really, really crucial to understand young men these days, and why our culture is so rabidly pro-male or misogynistic. Well, this has a lot to do with it, actually. And it's not just about, hateful guys or something, or, stereotypically bigoted people. Why are they bigoted? Why are they sexist? Why the misogyny? Well, look at the myths that we tell ourselves. Look at what we're raised with and the values that we as men are told or communicated are supposed to be important, right? Are supposed to be the roles we're supposed to fill, stuff like that. It's not all social molding and social constructs. There is a lot of biology mixed up into that too, but it's still reinforced heavily by social critique and social values, right? So, connecting all those dots is something that Jane Borden kind of helped me a little bit with, right? And learning about her work and seeing how she was analyzing that and going, oh, hell yeah. And the other thing that I said during the interview that I definitely could bring back up here is pushing back on the skeptic, secular, atheist world's view that America is not a Christian nation. It depends on what layer of America you're looking at as to whether that's a true statement or not. We're not, governmentally, legally speaking, we are not a Christian nation. We are not a theocracy, and we fucking better not become one. Because that's just heading into, horribly, it would be horribly ill-advised to allow that to occur. Theocratic rule is just not a good idea. Look at the Mormons, look what they do with it, right? Everything is curved and toward the lies and myths and deceptions of the religion. Because religion, by its very nature, has to control, and it controls through deception and deceit just as much as it controls through inspiration and emotional manipulation. And so these are just how religious institutions operate, is us versus them. And there's varying degrees of it, that not all of them go full cult, but they all engage in us versus them in varying degrees of unacceptance and intolerance toward people who don't believe the way they do. And when you mix that with the government apparatus and lawmaking and economic policies, it's a recipe for disaster 100% of the time to mix all those things together. My take, right? My hot take. But from a cultural, social layer, we are very, very, very much a Christian nation, right? Our entire value system and moral framework is built around an Abrahamic religion mindset. Whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism, the Abrahamic religions, right, I have a great deal of influence on how you and me and thee think about what's right and wrong and good and bad. Even if we're not followers of Christ or followers of Muhammad, we still break down to the same or very, very similar moral values and interpretations. And Jane's book really highlights that, really highlights it. Yeah. Oh, Japan at Green Gable. Yes, please do email me about Tulsi and Science of Identity. I would be interested in what you have to throw my way about that. So those were a couple things, right? That Christian nation thing really, it's sort of, it's funny because I've had, oh, come on, I've had him on twice now. Andrew Seidel, who wrote a book pushing back, because he's a constitutional lawyer, and from his position as an attorney and lawyer, certainly it's true that we are not a Christian nation, and he has laid out, you know, the legal arguments and framework for why we're not. And I've had him on my podcast back, you know, Sensibly Speaking days, a couple times to talk about that. And yet, it's kind of like the free will argument, but it's true. It's Schrodinger's free will, or it's Schrodinger's Christian nation. It both is and isn't at the same time, right? So it's kind of like that, you know. So those are a couple things I thought were worth knowing. And also, she really goes into some details about the Pilgrims and Protestantism and stuff too, which was kind of fun. Yeah, so those are a couple things I can throw out there. All right, let's see what else. Let's see what else we got coming in here. Oh, let me actually, before we carry on with more of these, let's switch over to our question. Let me throw this over here and go to the questions. Here we go from Funny Hat. This is one of my Patreon supporters. When does it start paying? Miscavige is very wealthy, but you were only making $50 a month. How high up must one go in the org before they start actually making a livable / exorbitant living off it? Is it limited to Miscavige, or is there also a well-paid management layer beneath him? Okay, so how this works in the church is that Miscavige is the only one who's really reaping the benefits of Scientology's financial rapaciousness. How's that for a phrase? There's the guy. Scientology is designed to enrich the guy at the very, very top, and I say guy because it's, you know, probably going to be a male moving forward, and that's what it's designed to do. So the inner circle of Hubbard and Miscavige got bennies for sure in terms of benefits or gifts or high-priced, you know, gifts, bonuses. You know, there's more potential at the top to get some things, some goodies, but there's also so much potential to be utterly destroyed overnight. Whereas the lower you go on the hierarchy in Scientology, I don't want to say the less abusive it is, because that's not true. That's not the way it is. But certainly it could be true that the less rewards you're going to get. You might get similar degrees of penalties lower down on the hierarchy, right? Like RPF, or, you know, physical punishments or disciplines, things like that can be enacted against you. With a lot less chance of getting bigger monetary bonuses or rewards, you know, at the lower levels. Yeah, I'd say that's true. But, you know, even the guys at the top might be gifted a Rolex or, you know, something nice, or, you know, some electronics or something. But, you know, they're also the people who Miscavige could turn around and just backhand anytime. Right? He could enact some kind of awful in their direction. So in terms of, you know, when does it start paying, Funny Hat? It doesn't. Not really. You know, you'll get some nicer food. You'll get some nicer clothes. You'll get a slightly nicer lifestyle to one degree or another. But at any moment, when you're at the top, at any moment, it could all be taken away from you, or you could be in the doghouse. And it's not a steady, stable work environment. It's a hostile work environment, to say the least. And it's always has you on pins and needles, right? You're always walking on eggshells up there. And there's certainly places lower on the command chains where you're also walking on eggshells all the time, you know, and stuff like that. But it tends to ease off a bit the lower down you go. Tends to. So I can, let's put it that way. Okay, good. So let's go back to our chat here. All right. Moving along. TM. Do you think they'll use all of Hubbard's works and lectures to recreate his personality with AI and write new policy of OT or not OT 9 and 10? Sorry. Yes, you could do that. You could do that. You're not going to feed Hubbard's personality into a computer, but you could feed his writing style. A large language model system, which is basically an advanced search box in terms of technology, is what y'all are being told is AI, right? Artificial intelligence. There's nothing intelligent about it. And I don't mean to make, you know, make it out that it's so simple, you know, or something. I recognize that AI engines, or sorry, LLM, I should say, large language models, are complicated machines, and and there's a lot of things going on in them, but they are not artificially intelligent. And I am enjoying the fact that the bubble is bursting on that. If you're paying any attention to Ed Zitron's writings, or, you know, some recently critical and skeptical writings and reporting, very, very recent in the AI tech industry, then you're seeing that the whole thing is starting to be shown up to be not what it has been representing itself to be for a long time, right? These billionaires have been selling y'all, you know, down the river, and definitely selling everybody a bill of goods when it comes to AI. Okay, so I had to say all that, had to get all that off my chest while we're on this thing, because it's not going to recreate Hubbard's personality. A machine couldn't do that. Hubbard's personality is way too neurodivergent and even epileptic for a computer to, you know, to recreate. But you could credibly and easily feed all of Hubbard's works into Gemini, or what's that other thing that they use with the notebook, Notebook LM, you know, is sort of a writing research assistant sort of AI type, you know, LLM, which I've used. And I've put all of the Scientology stuff into that because it's great for, again, it's like an advanced search engine. And so you can use it that way pretty effectively. It's very, very good for that kind of work. And so I've been using it for that because it really it really cuts a lot of time out for me. And on certain tasks. And you could have it recreate in Hubbard's writing style. You could have it create policies or bulletins or OT levels. You could. There's also lots and lots of stuff that was done in Scientology in the past that isn't really being used now. The OT levels we have now are not the same OT levels that existed all the time. There used to be different OT levels. There was OT 3 X and OT7, a whole different version of something that was called OT7. And there was a different route to go up them. There's been a few different variations of how the OT levels are packaged and put together. And it's not just about Xenu and body thetans. There were other OT levels that addressed other things. And maybe I should do a thing on that at some point, really dive into all the old stuff. But it does get a little confusing for people, which is why maybe I've hesitated to go there, because those older OT levels aren't really delivered now the same way they used to be. They changed it all up. And so it would really just kind of be history. It's not really like, but they could, Miscavige could look to those materials, I guess is where I'm going with this, as well as the old Route 1, Route 2 processes from Creation of Human Ability, I think is the book from the mid-1950s, where there are, OT processes that are not confidential, they're right in the book, but he could draw from those and put together something and call it, slap a label on it and call it OT 9 and 10. It would be not hard for Hubbard to do that. Ron Zorg has the true OT levels. Captain Bill was a genius. Okay. I don't know if that's satirical or not, Japan, but I'm going to take it that way because I don't think Captain Bill was a genius. Anyway, but there are some other, there's other things out there as the OT levels. So anyway, I guess bottom line is yes, TM, I do think you could do that. Yes, I do. Just not exactly the way you worded it, right? Which is why I went on a whole roll about that personality thing, just because I needed to say that. Okay, good. Thanks, Japan. Yeah, I mean, Captain Bill was, oh, man, is he one of the most entertaining and absolutely like wacko products of Scientology I have ever seen. Captain Bill was, man, that guy was a mind just ruined by Hubbard. I don't know what else he had going on, but wow, he was something else. Okay, let's carry on here. Thanks, TM, for that. I always enjoy an excuse with some questions to go on a tear about something else for a little while, right? And I'm very impatient with the amount of money and wasted time that and so much wasted worry and concern and anxiety and depression out there that has been brought about by AI and the constant litany of how everybody's jobs are going to be replaced with AI, and how these AI agents are so efficient at, chatting and taking over functions that pretty soon computer programmers aren't going to be needed anymore. Coders won't be needed. Your job won't be needed. Middle management won't be. All these jobs are going to get replaced by AI. And it's fucking bullshit. And I just really hate how much the billionaires like Sam Altman and Tim Cook and these tech guys have gotten, how much mileage they've gotten feeding you guys horseshit about what they plan to do to replace you, right? And none of that technology works anywhere near good enough to do what they keep saying it's going to do. And because they're scaring the shit out of everybody, people are falling for it because there's nothing that sells like terror. If you can feed a message propaganda-wise with conflict and emotions that create fear and concern and worry, it's so easy to sell. It makes it way easier. Try doing that with hope and watch what happens, right? It's a very different type of sell. And it's harder to do, right? It's harder, especially these days with so much hopelessness and distrust out there, to sell hope. But man, can you sell fear? Oh, just people just lap it up. And because they expect things to get worse. So when you give them, reasons to believe that things are going to get worse, it feeds into their confirmation bias, right? So AI has been a real source of a lot of unrest and worker anxiety, and it's the billionaires fucking with us. And I'm really, really not okay with that, and these guys are, anyway, so hopefully that bubble will burst sooner than later, and we don't have to hear anything more from Sam fucking Altman. Okay, so, please understand, Flylord, I'm not at all on some anti-LLM kick. I just literally said I use LLMs myself. I just don't fall for the bullshit of calling it AI, because that's not what it is, right? The label itself is a misnomer and a sales job. It's propaganda to call large language models artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence. These are not the same things. And the investment of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars into this technology so that we can have the equivalent of an advanced search box or a pretty good research assistant, you might say, in terms of functionality. That's what I've got, and that's what I use it for, and it's very helpful to me that way. But the idea it's creating things or intelligently figuring things out or something, bullshit. It's not what it's doing at all. And we've been, like I said, we've been being sold a real bill of goods on that. It's not that it doesn't have any utility, but the promises are so overinflated compared to the reality of what you really get. So that's what I got to say about that. Okay, let's get to, before I forget, since I don't want to ever forget these things, let's switch over to the other question that we have here. All right, fair enough. Where's my, nope, not that one, this one. All right. Here's the next question. This is a big, long one here. Was sent this week. Jay Endy asks, one question I've been trying to formulate is the issue of introverted personalities and ADHD. I've noticed a lot of Scientology promotions about how the tech, quote unquote, cured extreme shyness, or how many whales were bad at school. Scientology mercilessly drills its members to confront and to complete cycles. It instructs its members that shyness and lack of focus are afflictions, if not worse. I recall that Hubbard once said that one sign of an SP is someone who can't complete a cycle of action. That is true. With its own dense pseudo-clinical nomenclature, Scientology offers a kind of brutish treatment modality for shyness and ADHD. That's a really good sentence. So that's a good fact there. I don't know enough about psychology, but there must be some kind of analog for the highly repetitive, if not hypnotic, methods of Scientology, which involve a rigid system of punishment and rewards to public who confront problems of introversion and inattentiveness. Okay. Some kind of analog for the highly repetitive, if not hypnotic, methods of Scientology, in which involve rewards and punishment to confront. Yeah, okay. All right. So here's what I can say about this. Because I'm not a clinician, and I'm not pretending to be, and I'm not a therapist, and I'm not pretending to be. So I know what I know, and my mainline expertise is around coercive control in psychology, more so than ADHD. As a clinician, I understand it as somebody who has ADHD and who's read up on it because I want to understand my condition. I understand introversion and extroversion from those same sort of point of view as a lay person, right? Just kind of making sure we're clear on how I'm answering this. Now, that all being said, being an introvert, extrovert type personality, more introvert right, than extrovert. And being someone with ADHD who was in the Sea Org and on Scientology staff, ADHD being a childhood condition that you are kind of born with, or, you know, I don't know how one catches it, but it's there all your life. And I noted after I got my diagnosis and really started looking into ADHD, how Scientology had sort of made me habitually deny and suppress my ADHD to my general harm, because not knowing what I had going on, I would mislabel it with other things like egotism, or being an asshole, or being down tone, or being slack, being someone who was inattentive, someone who was out ethics, someone who was in a lower condition on my third dynamic, someone who was introverted, too much introversion. Hubbard said that there's a balance of introversion and extroversion, and that ideally, you know, one would achieve this balance, not be extreme one way or the other. And I thought my balance was all out of whack when I was a Scientologist and a Sea Org member. And all of those things that I just said to you, right, all those labels or ideas that I had were wrong. Not one of those things was true. I had ADHD. That's what was wrong. And by wrong, I mean that's a condition that I have that I can't right. I just have to learn how to label it, deal with it, learn about it, and manage it. That's what you do. And that's what I did not do all the time that I was in Scientology. I did these other things. I labeled it with these other things and then tried to address or handle it by lower conditions, or writing up my OWs, or, you know, getting slapped around, or just suppressing the shit out of it. And working in an environment where the social pressures were so great that there was never much of a release valve, and you just suppress and suppress and suppress all of this executive dysfunction and rejection sensitivity, which also is part of it, at least for me, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which we've talked about. So I'm saying all this about me with the idea that there are probably others of you out there who experience similar things to what I did. But I'll just talk about it through my experience. And so this was how I had to discipline myself to deal with my introverted nature and my ADHD phenomena when I was in the Sea Org, because you don't have time or any leeway to experience what you're experiencing. So you have to put it on suppress all the time. And like I said, with the mislabeling, it actually makes it, you know, kind of 10 times worse. So as you said here, Jay, with its own dense pseudo-clinical nomenclature, Scientology offers a kind of brutish treatment modality for shyness and ADHD. Yeah, and that treatment modality is called denial, right? Basically, it's just deny, 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 deny. You don't have it, you don't have it, you can't have it, it doesn't exist, there is no such thing, and therefore you can't have it. And you must have all these other things. All right, so I think I've said my piece on that in a way that makes sense. You guys let me know. If I said anything that doesn't make sense, or you have any other questions about it or whatever, just let me know. But that's kind of what I'm thinking might apply there. We'll get the chat back in a second there. Okay, so let's carry on with more of your questions. Michael Yoder asks, Watch the doc on Jack Parsons. Highly recommend. Yeah, wasn't it good? Oh my God, that was so good. Why didn't Jack just kick LRH out of the order or Crowley? And do you think he committed suicide with his knowledge of chemistry? Okay. Well, in a way, Hubbard kicked himself out of the order by taking off with Jack's money. I mean, he did not have any intention of coming back. He took the money and ran, right? He pulled a con on Jack Parsons, and he almost succeeded, except Jack Parsons, and I just think this is the funniest historical coincidence I can think of, is that Jack Parsons pursued L. Ron Hubbard. Hubbard absconded with Jack's girl and with his money and went off to Florida to buy some boats, and they were going to sell them and make all this money. And Jack Parsons pursued Hubbard and cast a magic ritual, because Hubbard had taken off, I think from Miami or something, or Tampa, in a boat and was out at the ocean. He was taking off. He was leaving. Like, so long, sucker. You know, you can't get me, Jack Parsons, right? And Jack Parsons casts a spell, and this storm comes up, and Hubbard has to turn around and come back in. And I just think it's hilarious. I really do. That happened. You know, because I don't for a second, not for even a millisecond, do I believe that Jack Parsons actually influenced the weather or cast a magic spell that caused a storm to come, right? I just think it's a funny coincidence that those two things happened at the same time. And Hubbard had to come back and face the music, you know. And clearly by then, Parsons was suing him or taking him to court. And Hubbard was, you know, completely no longer, you know, a member in good standing of Jack Parsons' Ordo Templi Orientis temple or you know, group. Okay, so you know, before that, I don't know why. You know, Jack wasn't super clear on Hubbard's nature until Hubbard had taken off. And then he wasn't hearing from them for a bit, and then he started to get really worried because there's all this money on the line, and right? So I don't know why he didn't kick him out earlier. Jack was somebody who I think saw the best in people like Hubbard or something, and thought that, you know, according to his writings to Crowley, Jack Parsons was quite taken with L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, Hubbard really, for those of you who think, you know, you look at pictures of Hubbard and you look at his, you know, fat belly in his later years, and you look at his teeth and you look at his, you know, his slimy smile, and you're just like, how could anybody fall for this guy? I'm telling you, you're looking at it wrong. Hubbard had something magnetic about him, and in real life, he could charm you. He was really good. You know, he just was. Yeah, on the Atrocity Guide. That's it, on the Atrocity Guide channel. Oh my God, it's the best Parsons documentary I've ever seen. So good. Okay, and then here's a key question. Do you think that Parsons committed suicide with his knowledge of chemistry? That is the big question of the ages when it comes to Jack Parsons, was his death an accident or was his death intentional? There's my take, for what it's worth, because everybody's got opinions, and it's all we're going to have, because nobody's going to know, because Jack is gone. My take is that it was an intentional accident, meaning that Parsons was in a pretty dark place, as we saw from the documentary and know from his writings and from everything else. His life was not going in the direction that he had intended for it to go, and I think he was at the top of the list of people who knew that. And I think he became careless, or was careless in that day, with a sort of, well, I'm not trying to kill myself. I don't think that Parsons was trying to do that. But I don't think he really cared that much about, well, if it happens, it happens. You know, like, also, of course, there was his degree of familiarity with very, very dangerous materials that you or I would absolutely be freaked out about just to be in the same room with. Some of the stuff that Parsons would mess with and throw around and toss around. And Hubbard commented on this, and I think he commented on it in reference to having known people like Parsons, that he said that, you know, you would see these guys who put dynamite together or who put these chemicals, these toxic explosive chemicals together, or carry around a flask of TNT in their back pocket, you know, and sit there and smoke a cigarette while they're standing or sitting, you know, 2 feet away from a powder keg or something, right? And it's just no big deal for them because they're pros and they're so familiar with what they're doing that they're not freaked out or worried about it. And that was certainly where Parsons was at in terms of his familiarity with chemical explosives and explosive materials. So, you know, accidents happen, and it's entirely possible that Jack did not want to die, and he just had an accident because he was careless that day or slipped or whatever. And it's also possible, and I think more likely, that he had kind of reached a place of some hopelessness or some giving up maybe, and that, you know, safety wasn't really his top concern at the point that became the end of his life, you know. That's kind of how I think about it a little bit, yeah. Okay, let's carry on here. Xian, do you think that with all the distractions about this administration, that it has pulled people's attention away from being concerned about cults, including Scientology? Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Plus, there's also, but more so than the Trump administration or the White House or politics. Politics is always, you know, going to be a thing that people have their attention on and is a point of, you know, discussion and kitchen table talk and you know, community meetings and, you know, forums and get-togethers and stuff like that, and endless numbers of news shows and media, you know, dedication to politics. It's always kind of a hot topic here in the United States, has been for decades and decades. The number of distractions coming out of our political media, so I'll just group it all together, news media, social media, all of this stuff having to do with politics, is extraordinary right now. It is at a level that you very quickly become saturated with, and super saturated. You become overfull with news and bad news and worry and threat, and you know, the threat level is it's reached a sort of a nationwide CPTSD level, right? It's just meaning there's just been instance after instance after instance of near traumatic levels of bad news and worrisome statements coming out of our White House over things, by design. Right? This is all purposeful. You know, the White House could shut it all down. They're not going to shut down political discourse, but they could shut down all the bullshit that comes out of this administration, like 24/7, right? But they can't, because Donald Trump, his personality demands that it be that way. In the same way that David Miscavige's personality demands that Scientology be run on a constant emergency basis. The only reason that the Sea Org runs the way that it does is because David Miscavige wants it to be run that way. And it's the same with Trump and his personality, and he wants you and me to constantly be worried and stressed out and or enamored with, depending on how you're approaching life, with him, with all of our attention stuck on him. That's half the reason he says all the crazy shit he says, is because we can't take our eyes off of him because it's thrown in our face all the time. And he loves that, lives for that. So I will say that, over the last 9 years now, Jesus fuck, 9 years, we have been treated to, this reality TV star mode of politics. And people who think it was always this way have no idea what they're talking about. It wasn't always this way, right? Not even remotely always this way. And so, so that has been a major point of distraction for all of us, that pulls attention away from vital causes and important things, whether it's, from science related stuff to politics related stuff to culture stuff. And Scientology is culture stuff. Scientology and cult phenomena and the fascination with it, and the sort of fad of social media being all wrapped up in cults, and let's look at cults, let's talk about cults, let's think about cults, let's highlight cults and cult leaders and narcissism and gaslighting and all this stuff that's kind of been sort of this very interesting stuff that people have been looking at for years now. That has peaked and tipped. And now the public are not as fascinated by it as they were. But I think ultimately that is the result of just pendulum swinging, and that all cultures and all societies have cultural fads, things that come in and they're popular or they're interesting or people look at them, and then people move on. They go on to something else, right? The novelty wears off. How long does it take the novelty to wear off? Well, it can take 20 years if you're, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It can take a while. But eventually it's going to happen. Today's hero is tomorrow's zero. That is 100% of the time that's going to happen. Very, very, I shouldn't say 100% of the time. Let me pull back on that. It's not 100% of the time. There are exceptions. But the more popular something becomes, the more likely it is, I think might be a maxim, right? That it's going to become a zero in people's eyes, right? Because they get sick of it or they get oversaturated with it. Pedro Pascal has had like 3 or 4 rises and falls on social media because the market just gets oversaturated with him. And then he goes away for a little while and then he comes back, right? And then he's everywhere and then he disappears for a little while. So, so it happens across the boards with people, with personalities, with topics or subject matters. And it's just sort of the push and pull of cultural novelty and interest, right? So I say all that to say that, yes, there is massive levels of distraction coming out of our current White House administration, and it's been this way for a number of years now. But that's not the reason why cults and Scientology have come and gone, so to speak. And they're not totally gone. The interesting thing about cults, as I've said before, is that it kind of came into the cultural zeitgeist, was all kinds of attention, right? Really, I think culminating in Me Too and Keith Raniere's prosecution is, I think, when we were peaking on that. And Scientology was part of that ramp up and part of that awareness, and became very, very in your face. And this was, of course, because of the Going Clear documentary, the Scientology and the Aftermath show. Those were the things that really put it there for people. And then lots and lots of side projects and other things like my channel and others contributed to that, right? But it's not, you can't maintain that, especially not with something like cults. It's just not, it's so niche, right? As people see it. When us in the cult world know it's not niche, it's all over the fucking place, and people really should be paying more attention to it. But of course we would say that. We're, experts in a niche field. So, there you go. Anyway, probably enough about that, but that's what I got on that. Okay. All right, good. So Japan, you're going to email me that stuff. Let's see what we got here. Still life. That's a new one. Do you have a video or series that addresses the main beliefs of Scientology, kind of like a list? Yeah, I do. Thank you so much for the work you do. Yes, it's called the Basics of Scientology series. And I did a number of videos breaking down the basics of the bridge to total freedom, the ARC triangle, the emotional tone scale, the E-meter. There's a whole video on the E-meter, breaks it all down. The conditions of existence, the 8 dynamics. I don't know if I did the video on conditions of existence, because I didn't cover all the fundamental stuff about Scientology, but quite a bit. All the books and lectures, I covered there's a whole video on the books and lectures of Scientology. I think it's a multi-part series. There's a whole breakdown of the bridge, a very, very thorough one. You want to know about, what it is that's the path that Scientologists are walking. I break it all down for you. So yeah, check out my playlist, The Basics of Scientology. Yeah, I think you guys will dig that. All right. Xian asks, have we seen our American Monomyth hero in America, and how will they manifest their righteous violence to save us? Well, we've seen many American Monomyth heroes in America. It's not one thing. Everything from Johnny Appleseed to Rambo is an American Monomyth. It's a structure to create a myth around, right? It's a framework. Love that word. We should do a drinking game sometime. Every time I say framework. I have Japan. I have a book that could walk you through a lot of Scientology stuff here too. That's right. You guys are awesome. So yeah, this is how I understand the monomyth term, right? Is that it's a sort of a skeleton on which you lay out a story or a plot line. And there are hundreds of examples of monomythic stories that have been told in American cinema, in literature, cartoons, I named a few earlier, just about every single Clint Eastwood movie, almost every single one, not all of them, but almost all of them are, some version or variety of the monomyth. All the Dirty Harry movies, for example, right? All the Westerns that Clint Eastwood did. That was one reason why Unforgiven was so amazing, is because it sort of took it and skeptically examined it under a microscope a little bit, without preaching once. Just through the course of the story of the movie Unforgiven, you are treated to a sort of skeptical view of the monomyth from within the monomyth. It's really good. Really good. That way. Yeah, Jack Reacher, of course. And yeah, Trump is a monomyth in his own mind. He's not that, but he sees him, he's capable of seeing himself that way, of course. Yes, very much so. And I'm sure that there are literary, scholars or, academics who could do a better job of breaking that down than I can. I come at this from a, lay cinema critique kind of point of view, right? I'm a cinephile. I love movies, but I'm not like a, movie analyst at the master's level or something, right? I can't talk about that as intelligently as I can talk about coercive control. But I think I do okay. All right, let's carry on here. OBG Foster, if Scientology settled an unpopulated planet, could it survive without a goal of clearing the planet? Sure. If Scientologists went to a planet where there was nobody there and started flourishing and prospering and, recreating themselves there, they would still need to clear the planet because their kids need to be cleared and need to become Scientologists, right? So even there, sure, they'll be clearing their kids. That's how that would work. Xian, when a person leaves the Scientology organization, will they eventually disabuse themselves of all the beliefs as well, even though it usually will take longer, are independence growing or shrinking? Okay. Thank you for asking me this. This is a great question because no, people will not automatically eventually disabuse themselves of the beliefs. That's the problem. That is actually the statement of the problem as I see it with former cult members of all stripes is they think, oh, it's all just going to fall away eventually, or time is the ultimate healer, or if I live in this other environment for long enough, I'll acclimate and lose the Scientology. And you won't. You won't. That's the problem, is that it's especially Scientology worms its way into your head at the emotional level and at the moral level. And those are the levels that people don't examine on their own, because they don't think about it to do that. They just think that cognitively, they're not thinking about ARC triangles anymore, and they're not talking about the tone scale, and therefore they've recovered, and they're all past it now. And they're not. And that's where I, get passionate, as you can see, because it takes an examined, dedicated work to disabuse yourselves of the beliefs, because those beliefs dig deep into the core of who you are, who you see yourself as, and who you manifest as. And so the ethics conditions, for example, dig deep. And the idea of the antisocial personality in Scientology goes deep in people. And so they continue to think that way, even though they don't use the Scientology language even. They still think like Scientologists and therefore act like Scientologists. They tend to be egotistical. They tend to be somewhat narcissistic, especially the higher up the bridge they went. The more OT you became, the worse this is. I've seen this enough times to feel that I'm on solid ground saying stuff like that. But lower level people can go for it too. It doesn't just take being, washed in the OT levels to carry the stink of them around with you after you leave the cult. I love these analogies I come up with. Anyway, that's a thing, right? And it takes the education component of this is why this is what I think is so important for ex-cult members to learn what happened to them, so that's the chance you have to disabuse yourself. If you think time alone is going to do it, it won't. Because I'll go out on a limb and say, because you're so inculcated or indoctrinated with ways of thinking, frameworks of thinking, and certainly the way it rewrites your morality, right? Your whole view of the world changes as a cult member. And your view of what the world is supposed to look like, calling back to that moral stuff I was talking about earlier, changes. And even concepts like, and this is expressed in concepts like, saving the world or making a difference in society or magical thinking, right? That we can even don't have to go to the big picture, save the world stuff. Even magical thinking, right? This postulate, I'm gonna postulate something really strong, and therefore I'm gonna get I'm going to manifest reality, right? I'm going to change reality through my thinking, which you're not going to do. That's not how it works. You got to do stuff to change reality. And so you can change your own reality by thinking, but you can't change reality by thinking alone, right? And yet Scientologists are steeped in the idea that you manifest your reality through your thinking. So that can carry on for a long, long time after coming out of a cult. Scientology or any other cult system or belief, right, can work this way. So yeah, and as far as our independence growing or shrinking, I don't know. I don't know what the current census situation is with independent Scientology, but my feeling, if it's worth anything, is that it's shrinking. I don't think it's a growing activity. And if somebody has proof otherwise, I'd be curious to see it, because I'm always interested in what's happening in that realm without, diving too deep into it. Okay. Yes. Is Elon Musk sending a Scientologist to a new planet? That'd be funny. You know what I laughed at, if you all haven't seen this, just since it's funny to bring up. If you watch the show, here, let me take this off the screen now. If you watch the show The Expanse, which I think is on Amazon Prime, it is one of the best sci-fi shows ever. It's so good. I think it's 6 seasons, and it's really, really good sci-fi. And one of the story elements is the Mormons and their effort to build a big spaceship and take all the Mormons off to some other planet or something. And it's a funny sideline of the show that I'll just throw out there for you guys. I think it's very funny. Okay, let's carry on here. We have, this is the last one in the queue right now. If you all have any other questions to throw my way, put them in the box. All right, so Angry Choad has for us, which do you think is more filthy, the bathroom at a swingers bar or the sleeping area at a homeless shelter? Do you think the Delilah show is gross abuse of the American public or positive deal? Okay, thank you, Angry Choad. I'm going to say that the bathroom at a swingers bar is probably filthier. Swingers are not known for the cleanliness. And I don't know what the Delilah show is. So I don't know. That's how culturally irrelevant and out of it I am, that I don't even know what that is a reference to. So I can't say. I don't know. Nah. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to give a few more minutes to see if anybody else has anything they want to throw my way in the question box. If so, like I said, go ahead and throw it in there. I wanted to tell you guys earlier, and I forgot, I got another chapter done on my book this last week. I finished up this chapter on the first gen, second gen cult members. And it's a long one. There was a lot to put in there. So that's drafted out now. And my next chapter is, I got 18 pages of notes to go through on the subject of trauma. That's the next chapter I have to write, and take all those notes and put it into something coherent and sensible as a chapter on, what I think ex-cult members should know about the subject of trauma. And hopefully I'll cut it down to a little less than 18 pages. That's a lot. This book's already lining up to be huge, and I don't want it to be huge. I want it to be shorter than I think it's going to end up looking. So we'll see what happens with that. But I wanted to let you know that motion was happening on the book again, and I'm very, very, very happy about that. I've got to get it done because I need to get that finished, and there are going to be chapters in this book on critical thinking, on emotional reactions and emotional needs, and on morality, and then a chapter on putting those all together to talk about the REM model. That's going to be in this book. But then I've got another book now that I'm going to need to write about the REM model, and that's probably going to be significantly shorter. I don't think that's going to be some huge, long, Daniel Kahneman-sized book. But I think it'll be kind of fun to put that together and see where it goes. If y'all haven't seen the two podcasts I put out about the REM model, I really highly recommend you check it out, because it really informs everything I do and how I think about you and me and how we behave and why we do what we do and why cult members do what they do. And understanding that, whether ideological nonsense or religious nonsense or any other nonsense that we get up to, I think the REM model gives a really nice, simple way of explaining it. And so putting it out there for you guys. Okay. There are a couple other questions coming in. I just need this thing to update for me. Let's see here. Sometimes... there they are. Okay, good. OBG Foster asks, have you done a video on why Scientology is wrong about psychiatry? I have not. Oh, you'd think these things would occur to me, but why Scientology is wrong about psychiatry. What a great idea. I've been thinking about topics to cover for people who are either on the fence or have just left Scientology, and this would be a good one. This would be a real good one. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion, OBG Foster. That's good. Yes, auditing Scientology. I did see your question come in. I'm sorry I did not get it into the queue for today, but let's get it up next week for sure, okay? Thank you for that. I just did not get it transferred over. It's been a busy week this week. As I mentioned, I was having interviews every day. And also that, without getting into any specifics, because I can't really go there, the things have been picking up a little bit on the aftermath lines lately too. It's been a lot of work in that realm. Okay, did that go back up on the screen there? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Angry Choad asks, are you a Nickelback fan? No. What are your thoughts about the new Dianetics book that came out recently? Not a lot. I don't have a lot of thoughts about it. I know that they're going to be doing a push. It's the 75th anniversary, blah, 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 blah. And so, Miscavige kind of has to do something about it. And I guess he's putting out a new Dianetics campaign that is with new services and stuff that'll be coming at some point. We'll see if they work it out to come this year or not. If they really had their shit together, they would have released it all on May 9th. Which was the 75th anniversary of Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. But they didn't, because Miscavige is horribly, horribly inefficient at that stuff. So maybe next year, maybe this year, they'll get those new Dianetics services out. But my thoughts are that it's going to tank and go nowhere, just like it has been for years, because Miscavige doesn't know how to market things effectively and doesn't... Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say he doesn't really care that much about his product, but I don't think it's that so much as he's just so bad at his job. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. All right. Let me check these. There they are. Okay, John asks, do you think that Scientology is having a hard time recruiting new members because of protests? By the way, auditing Scientology, if you want to, you could just take that question and throw it in the question box right now, and I'll throw it up on the screen and answer you. We don't have to wait for me to process your email since you're here. And admittedly, I should have thrown it in the queue, but my bad. Okay, so do I think they're having a hard time because of protests? I think that the protests that happen in Los Angeles have probably affected their ability to recruit new members there. I think that would be true. I do not think that the protests that are happening in Clearwater are doing anything useful to stop people from joining Scientology, because people don't join Scientology in Clearwater, and they don't go to Flag to start Scientology services as fresh new people. So protests that are happening at the Flag base aren't stopping people from joining Scientology, right? Because it's just not the right venue to do that. The ones at the test center and at the Los Angeles org and stuff like that, or maybe some of the other orgs where protesting has happened, could certainly give somebody second thoughts about walking in. We would have no statistical information on that to measure, right? Nobody's keeping tabs on, oh, this guy was walking over and he was going to go in. Nope, he's not going in, right? Like, we have no idea of that. So I'm only saying this in giving the possibility that, yeah, sure, of course, people could have seen the protests and went, oh, wow, really? And walked off. But I don't know of many stories in that direction. I don't know of any, really. That stop them from doing that. But I'll sort of throw it out there as a distinct possibility. Sure, of course. I think Scientology was already having a hard time recruiting new members, and has had a hard time recruiting new members since the days of Anonymous, and certainly since the days of Scientology and the Aftermath being released, and the Going Clear documentary, and all that exposure and all the books that came out. I mean, a ton of books, memoirs, my book, other people's stuff came out, all in these 2010s, and have done a real bang up job of informing people about what Scientology really is. So I know their numbers are way, way, way down as a result of that. And so, sure, yeah, protesting could have been part of that picture as well. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. It would be silly for me to, because I couldn't prove that. So there you go. Okay, X-Cyan asks, was there ever a golden age of ethics? Kind of. There were internal releases within Scientology, like there was a reversion of the ethics specialist course, and there was a third round of the PTSSP course, and there were certain issues back when Marty Rathbun was still involved in the church is when this was happening. This is ancient history, right? This is like 20 years ago. There was 25 years ago. There were these motions made, right? And this was supposed to be creating a golden age of ethics. There was also the release of Superpower, and part of Superpower that doesn't get talked about a lot is the ethics repair list, or the ethics justice repair list, which is an auditing action done as part of Superpower, where you're supposed to clean up past injustices and misuse of ethics. Total joke that Scientology would be doing that in the same way that Scientology tries to, oh yeah, South Park, of course. That South Park kind of being concurrent with the whole Anonymous time period, I guess, is sort of what I lump that in with, but you're absolutely right. That was part of it. Anyway, yeah, so that was internally talked about as a kind of golden age of ethics, right? That's what comes to mind for me on this. Okay, so here we go. Auditing Scientology, KC. Osa Matt, who I believe is the KC org DSA, accused me of being a squirrel. I'm a never-in, think LRH tech is nonsense, and would not intentionally be applying any of it. What LRH could I be? Right, of course. How could you be a squirrel? The way that Scientology staff could call you a squirrel would be, in their mind, you as a protester are twisting up Scientology and representing it as something that it's not, or as something different than it really is, right? Same thing. Or you are corrupting its use in your protesting. And I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm saying how it could be thought of this way. You're corrupting its use in some fashion to misuse Scientology, therefore making you a squirrel. It's a stretch, even for a Scientologist, to call somebody who's not in Scientology and never was in Scientology and isn't doing anything with Scientology. It's a stretch to call them a squirrel. But if they think you're twisting up or corrupting Scientology in some fashion, then to their way of thinking, that's what you would be. Werner Erhard, the whole Est Landmark Forum thing, comes to mind right now as somebody who is not a Scientologist, but is taking Scientology and using it in a damaging or destructive way. So Werner Erhard is a squirrel. Same thing with you, right? If you're taking, as a protester, let's say, this is just an example. I don't know what you're doing out there auditing Scientology, KC, right? But if you were looking in people, Scientologists, if you were giving them the dead-eyed stare, right? The Scientology stare, and you were ridiculing or laughing about or somehow joking about the tech or the TRs or the e-meter or something and throwing it in their face, then they could think you're doing some weird thing with the tech. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying in their mind, they could think that, right? Odds are they're not really even giving it that much thought. It could well be that this guy, Osa Matt, is accusing you of this just because it's what comes to his mind. And it's a dirty word he can throw at you, right? In his mind. It's an insult. You're just a squirrel, you fucking squirrel. That kind of thinking might be behind why you're being called a squirrel. Technically speaking, if you are not taking Scientology and twisting it up somehow, you're not a squirrel. Because that's what Hubbard says a squirrel is they take Scientology and they twist it up. But that doesn't mean that every Scientologist is going to use the words properly. That's what I got for you on that one. Okay. Oh, you told him to keep his TRs in. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about, auditing Scientology. That's gonna piss him off, right? That's gonna what? You think you know more about the tech than me? You think, as a protester, you're gonna lecture me about my TRs? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Right? That's gonna be what's going on in Osa Matt's head, when you tell him he needs to keep his TRs in. TRs are training routines, TM. They are practical exercises or drills that people do in Scientology to improve their communication skills and improve their ability to control things. There are two sets of TRs. There's TRs 0 through 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All separate drills that you do to improve communication. And then there's TRs 6 through 9, right? There's no TR 5, but there's a TR 6, 7, 8, and 9, which is all about control and moving people's bodies around a room and stuff like that. And we call those the TRs, right? Or the training routines. They are very, 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 very important in the practice of Scientology. TRs are low-level stuff. Everybody learns about them very quickly and practices them a lot, because they're supposed to teach you how to hold yourself in a composed, rational, civil way and communicate effectively and clearly and, drinking my Coke here, and be able to control objects and people in your vicinity. That's what the TRs are supposed to train you to be able to do. And people in Scientology spend hours and hours and hours practicing or drilling these TR drills. Okay, so that's what those are. And yes, and where's your TPS report? That's right. So, so there we go. Okay. So let's go ahead and wrap up today. We've done a good chunky show. We got 90 minutes on the clock here, and we've been doing pretty good. And I have a couple wonderful suggestions from you guys on some stuff to follow up on. So I will put this up on my Post-it notes. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 Post-it notes on my board over there of videos to make. And, oh yes. This is the other one I need to tell you guys about. This one is absolutely going to be happening this week. Whether I can get the Chase Hughes one done this week, we will see. But this one, this other one I'm going to get done. And here's what, let me give you a little preview of what this is, because we're going to be going live probably Tuesday or Wednesday to do this. Let me see here. Let me throw up my calendar and see what I've got on the lineup for this week. Looks like it'd probably be Tuesday or Thursday. Not sure which yet. I've got a letter. Somebody emailed me a letter of an email of a conversation they've been having with an existing on the fence, barely on the fence, Scientologist. And there are tons of little points of cognitive dissonance that this Scientologist is experiencing right now, demonstrated or written out in this letter. And I thought it might be of use. This was sent to me like, hey, could you use this and show on video like how the doubts start happening in people's minds, right? With people who are in Scientology. And I thought this was a great idea. And so we're going to take this letter, and it's not going to have any identifying information in it. You guys won't have any idea who the person is who wrote this email. But it's going to be a great way to kind of show and tell on some, what it looks like when the Scientology belief set starts falling apart in people's minds. And so it might be kind of fun to do that. So we're going to do a live on that this week. And that'll be fun. So that's a little preview of what's coming up. Okay, I think I've covered everything. I think I did. I think I got it all in there. Auditing KC, thanks for throwing your question in on this one, and I hope my answer was understandable at least for that. Again, I'll remind everybody, if you have questions for me during the week, you want to know something, go ahead and email me. I will get it up on the show here eventually. You're just going to be patient with me and my ADHD. I appreciate your patience and your support of my show and the channel and what I'm trying to do here. And on that happy note, I'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye-bye.